Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, wherever you may be watching or listening live or on demand. This is the Makeshift Managers Podcast. My name is Austin. With me, as always, is my buddy Devin.
I am here, live and in person. Welcome, guys.
We are done defending the North. We are leaving the wall. It is time to go south. Are you ready for this?
Hey, man, born ready. You don't have to get ready if you stay ready, Austin. And I'll have you know, my mind has been nowhere but south all week.
I don't know if that's a good thing or if you just need actual help.
I don't know, man. It's everything. Southwest, southeast, south by southwest. Like it's getting bad. Everything, everywhere I look, my compass is constantly on the S.
Let me tell you somebody who does need help. The longest tenured coach in the NFC South, Matt Rule, and the Carolina Panthers, finishing last season at 5-12, losing their last 7 in a row. They went from the likes of Sam Darnold to PJ Walker to the return of Cam Newton, back to PJ Walker, back to Sam Darnold, back to the dumpster fire. All meanwhile, Christian McCaffrey logged a solid, 7 games? 6 games?
About like 70 carries, about like 40 targets, and a lot of crushed dreams in fantasy football.
One game.
Par for the course.
Carolina Panthers, I tried to hang with them as long as I could last season. I'm not saying Sam Darnold was the savior that they needed, but I felt like he could have done enough to get them where they thought they could be. Granted, I will cut them a little bit of slack. When you're without your cornerstone of your offense in Christian McCaffrey, the offense doesn't go like it should. Christian McCaffrey has, and always will be the offense as long as he's employed by the Carolina Panthers. Whether he's playing 1 game or 17 games, when he goes, they go. He's just that damn good. I would probably say he's probably the best all-purpose back in the league if he was able to play 17 games. Obviously, the best ability is availability, but
yeah,
I digress. Looking at the team, you got DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, Terrence Marshall Jr. as your wide receiver core, your solid wide receiver trio. Not the worst in the world. People like DJ Moore a lot. Robbie Anderson's probably regretting every decision he's ever made, and Terrence Marshall doesn't have a choice. They got an okay line. Just any quarterback with a decent amount of time will do you well, but they tried to upgrade quarterback this season in Baker Mayfield. Would they trade him a 4th round, a 5th round, something like that over to the Browns? Not too much, as let's be fair, Baker wasn't really worth a whole lot to start with.
Yeah. Carolina's interesting to me. This is a team that's been caught in just this crossfire of wanting to compete and not being good enough since 2015, whenever they lost to the Broncos in the Super Bowl. They remind me a lot, at least their run reminds me a lot of those, not so much like the early 2010 Seahawks, but kind of similar to that in terms of like, yes, the Seahawks got one, but after that second one, it was kind of just trying to retool and repair what you had before, but never finding that same magic. Carolina's a quarterback away from competing on a decent level. I would think wild card-ish or wild card adjacent. This is a team that's featuring a defense that has some all-pro level talent. Brian Burns has been a legitimate edge rusher for all the years he's been in the league in his career. You've got D tackles and Derek Brown and Matt Ioannidis that I believe are Pro Bowlers that they're going to be able to get the snap counts that they need. And I think out of all the secondaries in this division, this could be the second best that we're going to see any given year, depending on how J.C. Horn bounces back after being injured his rookie year, because you have a tandem at safety of Jeremy Chin and Xavier Woods. While Woods appeared to be less than stellar a couple of years back, he's kind of reclaimed his spot as one of the better safeties overall in football. I think this secondary has a lot of potential going into this year, and I'm not super worried about this linebacker group as well. Shaq Thompson played really well last year, and a big thing for me is this is a team that has paid big money for the running back. They're paying Christian McCaffrey a lot of money. And for a lot of these teams that are paying players a premium for their contracts, you would ideally like to compete. No front office or ownership group wants to pay for a less than stellar product. So this kind of feels like the last shot Carolina has with the core that they're going to have moving forward, Because, yes, they did draft Matt Corral in this year's draft, which I thought was a decent pick. I think they should stop toiling away with these more seasoned young quarterbacks like Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, kind of saying, holy shit, their price is as cheap as ever and their first-round talents. Hopefully it clicks over here. It sadly hasn't. And so for every good thing I can say about Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, and even Robbie Anderson to a certain extent, they are hard capped by the level of talent behind the center. It's not their fault, and I could blame Matt Rule, but it feels a little disingenuous. This is a team that's been kind of running in circles since 2015 to lesser or greater degrees. It's cyclical in Carolina. And I think they've really avoided a full-on rebuild for a majority of the last 6-7 years. And I think if it doesn't work this year, they're heading straight into a full-on rebuild. Because
like you said, the Matt Corral pick was okay. Obviously, they made a solid pick at tackle with Akeem. Because they do have to protect the quarterback. I feel like that was a weak spot for them that they could improve high up in the draft. And there was not a good quarterback to take in the top 10 anyways. So I think they got Matt Corral in the fourth round, if I remember right.
Yeah, the only quarterback that went in the first 2 rounds was Kenny Pickett. We went over him last week. It's
right. So
any quarterback drafted this year outside of Kenny Pickett, even Kenny Pickett could be viewed as a value pick. The Steelers picked him in the late 20s, mid-20s. So there's a lot of value to be had at quarterback in this year's NFL draft, more so than I think we'll probably see next year, because there's a lot of these like first-round talent guys that usually if there's 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round, you get about 3 that are like perennial All-Pros or like Pro Bowl caliber players. You're not going to get a hit on every single quarterback. So, yeah, it's difficult.
Here's the problem, though, is that they've gone after Baker Mayfield. They got Baker Mayfield, but even in his best season, when they went to the playoffs, he threw for 3,500 yards. He's never broken 4,000 yards. Even in the 2 seasons he played 16 games, his career high is 38.27. His best completion percentage is 63.8%. His TD to interception ratio is not even 2-1. Throws a lot of picks. This is a team that really can't afford a lot of turnovers. To be fair, who can afford a lot of turnovers? Maybe some great teams can recover from them, but this is a team that can't do that. They fell apart towards the end of the season, to put it lightly, and there's not really a whole lot for them to go. Their ceiling feels really low. Even trying to get why is the cornerback cornerback they traded for last season? Why can't I remember his name? The guy from the Patriots.
Who?
Are we really blanking
Cam
right
Newton?
now? No, the corner.
No.
Corner.
Oh,
Steve.
They traded for Stephon Gilmore. This is a team that also still is
Gilmore.
featuring a team that's also still featuring CJ Henderson at the corner spot. So their corner room could actually be pretty damn good if everything actually goes to plan. Because looking at the secondary, Jeremy Chin is an all-pro level safety. Maybe not all-pro, first-team all-pro, but he is right up there in the top 10 of any safety in football. Dante Jackson, CJ Henderson, and JC Horn is a great triplet trio to have at corner. JC has to prove himself because he didn't get to play a lot last year. But if I'm correct, he was the first or second corner off of the board in last year's draft. I think he was second because Surtain went right before him.
Yes,
but
I do believe
a corner picked in the top 10. It usually has merit to it. We just saw it with Derek Stingley Jr. and Sauce Gardner. First round corners tend to translate pretty soon after the draft.
Well, I just think the big thing about the Panthers is their defense isn't really the questionable spot. They have a really good defense on paper, and they should be at least okay and hold most teams down to a manageable amount of points. But there's just not a quarterback in the room that really makes me feel like they could win 9 games. Because I feel like you're going to have to win at least 9 games to be into the wild card, maybe even 10. And I just don't see a team led by either Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, or Matt Corral winning 9 games. McCaffrey can play all 17, and I think he will pick them up some wins because I think he's just that good. But this team just doesn't jump off the paper to me anymore. It feels like they're in a win-now situation, but like we've said hundreds and hundreds of times, you kind of need an elite quarterback to get to the top, and they just don't have that. They're not going to be able to get by the great defenses that they're going to run into with Tampa Bay, and the Rams, the two main juggernauts of the NFC.
Well, it's even a fact of the matter for the Panthers is they have to get through the teams in their division. They're going to have to beat a team like New Orleans. They'll hopefully have to try and split with Tampa Bay if they even want a shot at winning, not even winning the division, but making the wild card. This is a team last year. If you list off their offensive talent, McCaffrey, DJ Moore, even Robbie Anderson, who's their tight end? Double check. They had tight end. They've got Tommy Tremble and Ian Thomas. Not going to jump off the page, but still solid caliber talent. This team, they couldn't even muster 18 points a game. They allowed about 24 a game. So it's not like Baker Mayfield has to be super transcendent to kind of try and flip the script. They have a healthy Christian McCaffrey. I think he's worth 1 to 2 touchdowns per game. That changes their season completely last year. So I think if Christian McCaffrey stays healthy and Baker Mayfield can be his 2019-2020 self, where he threw 26 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, I think this team, they're going to end up cooking with something that I think they haven't had in a couple of years. They need to hold on to the ball. They have the personnel to control the clock. They have Chuba Hubbard as a backup to Christian McCaffrey to be able to kind of weather the storm over a full season and give him the rest that he's going to need. And even looking past Chuba Hubbard, you got Deonta Foreman, who had, if I'm correct, he played in Tennessee last year. This is a guy last year that actually was able to play a pretty good season. So all in all, I do think that this team has potential. Do I expect them to win the division? Fuck no. Do I think they could beat the Falcons? Yes. Do I think they could be pushing for a wild card if everything breaks their way? Quite possibly. But the main questions that need to be answered are surrounding Baker Mayfield and if Matt Rule can actually coach a competent offense at the NFL level. Because he's gone through different coordinators. He's gone through a multitude of quarterbacks. I'm done blaming it on the players. This year, it's Matt Rule or bust. If you can't do anything to improve, then they're going to not kick you out of the room because you can only look at Chris Woodward, Austin. You're Rangers manager. You can only do the same thing so many times without getting a different result and keep the guy around.
I mean, let's be fair. Matt Rule probably shouldn't have a job.
He was
really a 5-12 season. That's just not it. And the problem that they had is that they had Chuba Hubbard and Deonta Foreman. And let me preface this by saying you cannot replace Christian McCaffrey's production. It's just not physically possible. But if they didn't even get half of that, like everybody in fantasy was grabbing Chuba Hubbard the second McCaffrey went down as a handcuff, and it just didn't pan out. They really just could not get anything going on offense. And Baker Mayfield just doesn't jump out to me that he's going to change anything. Is he better than Sam Darnold? Sure. To set the bar very low, Baker Mayfield is better than Sam Darnold. But Baker Mayfield, this isn't even really the best situation that Baker Mayfield's ever been in. He had a really good defense out in Cleveland. Like we don't need to talk about that relationship now, but arguably he had a really good situation. They pounced on the Steelers, who were employing Ben and his noodle arm, whatever was left of it, and then they got bounced in the next round.
Well, a best case scenario, the best version we've ever seen of Baker Mayfield was a guy that was running a lot of RPO and a lot of play action. He went from having one of the best pure rushers in football to having arguably the best running back when healthy in Christian McCaffrey. So if there's a formula for Baker Mayfield to be a competent NFL quarterback, this is a situation where I think it works out. You have Robbie Anderson, a guy that's going to be able to stretch the field vertically. Terrace Marshall is also a very skilled receiver that I think got a really tough go of it last year playing with Cam Newton and the ragtag bunch of quarterbacks that they employed. It was really hard for any rookie to produce whenever Cam Newton was their quarterback. I'm looking at N'Keal Harry. I'm looking at Jacoby Myers. Like, there's reasons why receivers don't produce, and there's reasons that, there's differing reasons why players don't produce. And I think Terrace Marshall last year was not based upon his talent, but his situation. Same thing for guys like DJ Moore. I don't think DJ Moore has fully been unlocked. But if you have Robbie Anderson spacing on the y-axis, and you have DJ Moore, who I think is elite in the slot. I think DJ Moore is one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL right now, just based upon pure talent. I think if Baker Mayfield and a healthy Christian McCaffrey are on the field, we could see the best we've ever seen from DJ Moore. Because even with bad quarterback play, he's close to 1,000 yards damn near every year he plays. So it's going to come down to if Baker can – I think Baker can fit into the scheme that Matt Rule is going to employ. I just need his ancillary parts to stay healthy and for himself to stay healthy. A big part of Baker Mayfield last year is the fact that he destroyed his shoulder halfway through the year, and he was playing through that. And obviously, you judge the players with how they played. Baker didn't have to be out there. Obviously, he played for his team, and I commend him for that. But he was obviously hurt past that Packers game, so it's tough sledding. But if we have a fully healthy Baker Mayfield and a fully healthy Christian McCaffrey, that's 2 steps forward for a team that I think can overperform what we're expecting.
Yeah, I think they can win 7 games. I think I could put them at 7-10 and call it quits. I just don't see this team finishing over 500. It's just I was on the opposite side last year. I was really pushing for them to try and do their best and,
well, we could run
where
through
they
the
need
schedule.
to be. Sure, why not?
So they're playing in Carolina against Cleveland week 1. Deshaun Watson's not playing. I think I'm going to take Carolina. Baker versus
probably.
Jacoby.
I would.
It's all emotion.
Yeah.
I think Carolina gets up to actually shut Deshaun Watson the fuck up and put on for their new quarterback. Because that's one thing about Baker that I think translates to a Carolina situation. Baker Mayfield is pretty corny in terms of like the way he behaves a lot of the time, but I think he's able to have his teammates identify with him in a way that's different than, say, a Sam Darnold. I think players like to play with Baker Mayfield to a certain extent. So I think the guys will get up for that game against Cleveland. They should be able to beat the New York Giants. We don't know what the Giants are going to be this year because they have the new head coach. Saquon Barkley is back. Interesting game in week 2. New Orleans, I think, is their first guaranteed loss. Arizona, they probably lose. They're losing. They have 3 straight sent from hell. They're not winning a game against SF, LA, or Tampa Bay. They could beat Atlanta. Cincinnati, they should lose, but it could go Carolina's way if they're actually better than
we literally talked about last week where the Bengals lost some games where they shouldn't have lost, and if they fall into that cycle again, they could not see a division title. Yeah. And if there was any one of those games where they could fall into that for the first time in the season, granted, I think they'll have a loss before they play Carolina, but
yeah,
one of those iffy games is you feel like they should beat Carolina, but maybe Carolina's defense is just on one that day. They have 3 quarterbacks for that trio.
Carolina's a professional football team. This isn't like the Seahawks this year. This isn't like teams like the Bears. This is a professional football team. There are pieces that I have seen do incredible things in an NFL field. And I trust a lot of the pieces that this team actually rosters. It's just a matter of Matt Rule actually figuring out the damn pieces and making them gel. I think they're going to beat Atlanta twice or split with Atlanta, to be honest. Baltimore, Denver, 2 losses. They beat Seattle. Toss up against Pittsburgh. Should be able to beat Detroit, depending on how Detroit comes out. Because if you watch Hard Knocks, Detroit's coming for the Super Bowl, it looks like. Lose to Tampa. So I think they split with New Orleans. They could beat Atlanta twice or split with Atlanta. They beat Cleveland. They beat New York. Arizona, I think they lose. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll give them Pittsburgh. That's 7. And if they can sweep New Orleans, that's 8 wins. 7 wins seems about as realistic as it truly can be. At their peak, if everything goes right and say Tampa takes a step back because Arians is gone and their defense just isn't the same, maybe they sneak a game out. We're about 2 years removed from Daniel Jones almost beating Tom Brady in primetime. Anything can happen on an NFL Sunday. So at their absolute best, I'd project 9 wins. But
Daniel Jones or Taylor Heineke?
No. Daniel. Well, the playoff game was against the Commanders, but the New York Giants went toe for toe with the Bucs on a Thursday night game a couple years back. It was insane. It was absolutely insane. I think I started Daniel Jones that week. I was like, holy shit, dude. And then, Daniel, I was like, this is crazy. But yeah, I think Carolina is going to surprise some people. This team is far from the worst in the NFL. They have a lot of offensive weapons to work with, a quarterback that should be an improvement over Sam Darnold, and a defense that is ready to play as soon as the ball gets snapped.
Out of all the last place teams that we've talked about and all the last place teams we're going to talk about, this is probably one of the more competitive ones. Even then, Atlanta might finish last. I'm not too sure yet, but even if Carolina were to finish last at 6-11 or 7-10, they're still one of the better last place teams in the league for sure. They definitely will put out a great defensive game most of the night. It's the offense that's going to have the question marks. If Christian McCaffrey's healthy, that's great. That'll give them a chance every single week. But if he's not, and you can't get your production out of Chuba Hubbard and Dante Foreman, then things start to get questionable. You double up, DJ Moore, who's arguably, not even arguably, is the number one wide receiver on the team. Robbie Anderson. I still have questions about Robbie Anderson. I don't trust their tight ends. So there's definitely room for them to be a 10-7, maybe a 9-8 team. But I don't think I'd see them winning double-digit games.
I do feel like this team has this team has a better shot at keeping the offense on the field by a large margin than what the offense was doing last year. With Christian McCaffrey on the field, the chains move far easier. The last healthy game we saw of Christian McCaffrey, if I'm correct, was whenever Carolina was taking it to Kansas City. That game was close. Or it was one of Christian's fully healthy games last year. Like McCaffrey against the Chiefs, if I'm correct, last year or was it the year before? Like whenever McCaffrey's on the field, that team is just significantly better. Like he raises the ceiling of that team immensely. And if you
100%.
have him, it automatically opens up holes for the rest of the guys. So if he can be healthy, this team is going to be better than we expect it to be.
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about McCaffrey all day. We'll move on.
That's my quarterback.
To the 7-10 Atlanta Falcons. Matt Ryan is gone. Tell me more, Devin.
This team was like as average to below average as Minnesota has been for the last 5 years. The Falcons are super weird. For all the shit I gave Carolina for being like just in the cyclical nature of like being just caught between rebuilding and retooling, Atlanta's the same fucking situation. They just had a better overall quarterback throughout that time frame. Since the 2018 Super Bowl loss to Tom Brady, 28-3, insert your memes down below on the Twitter thread. That's going to post after this is done. This team is they're just trying to get better. That's as simply as I could put it. This is a team that does not have the it factor. They have their bridge quarterback. They have their bridge running back. They have, hopefully, their two franchise receivers, although one is going to be sitting on a couch for the rest of the season because of DraftKings Sportsbook, not sponsored. But I digress. They've added in a guy in Brian Edwards who never seemed to mature or realize his potential out in Las Vegas/Oakland. They have one of the most exciting tight ends in football in Kyle Pitts. The highest drafted tight end ever. He broke the rookie receiving yards record for a tight end. Kyle Pitts to the moon. Offensive line, I don't love it. I don't hate it. It could possibly be improved. I think they're in a good situation moving forward because they have Marcus Mariota. I think he is the perfect bridge quarterback for whoever would lease his services. Like, he's not terrible. He almost beat the Chargers in primetime 2 years ago. Marcus Mariota is a talented quarterback. He went second overall for that reason. He was a Heisman finalist almost every year he started. Desmond Ridder was interesting for them to pick. Quarterback out of Cincinnati, if I'm correct. Ridder has some really nice talent coming out of college. I think he's going to have to adjust to the NFL level of play. The Falcons have been trotting Felipe Franks out as a tight end during training camp. So who knows? Fun fact.
Special.
It's a fun fact. I opened up some packs of Panini Chronicles football today. I got a Kyle Pitts score and Panini Prism rookie card. On one of the cards, it said Kyle Pitts actually played quarterback and D-end in high school. So if Kyle Pitts can do it, why can't Felipe Franks? I digress. This is a defense that does not inspire much hope for me. They have some solid pieces and guys like Deion Jones and Grady Jarrett. Let's see. I've got some stats on their defense right here. You'd be surprised. One of their linebackers, I think he got, so let's see. Yeah. So Foyesade Oluokun, their linebacker, where is he?
Real quick, Dio in the chat says he feels like Atlanta's going to finish last in the division. I don't think that's far off. This team really feels like Gadget, the football team. You have Marcus Mariota, who's your quarterback / running back. You have Cordero Patterson, who's your running back, wide receiver, strong safety, linebacker, head coach, offensive coordinator, and water boy. You have Kyle Pitts, who's pretending he's a tight end when really he's a wide receiver. Nothing has fixed the secondary in the slightest. This team's going to give up a lot of points like it seems like they always do. I don't think it's far off to call Atlanta a last place team. Like you said, Marcus Mariota is going to be a great bridge quarterback, but he's not really going to get you anywhere else. They really honestly should finish bottom 5 and just get a decent pick at this point.
This team is down bad, and I was just actually alluding to a player that no longer plays for the Atlanta Falcons. Their leading tackler last year was the linebacker Foyesade Oluokun. He had 192 total tackles last year, Austin, and now he's a Jacksonville Jaguar. So that speaks enough to the overall quality of this roster and their defense. I like the secondary, at least on the perimeter on the outside. AJ Terrell and Casey Hayward could be a really nice tandem in terms of coverage corners. I just don't think they're going to have a fun time because I don't see a lot of pressure getting to quarterbacks, and I don't trust this linebacker group at all outside of maybe Deion Jones, and he's been less than ideal for a lot of his career. He's underperformed. You have an offense that I don't trust the offensive line to give Mariota time. You have a starting wide receiver in Drake London who is a rookie who should really be the wide receiver too if Calvin Ridley could actually take the field. This is a team without the baked-in upside of Carolina because we saw this team for a bulk of the year. While Calvin Ridley didn't play, we're not getting him back this year, so it's not like it's not like Calvin Ridley can add to the upside. This is a team that is relatively unchanged outside of adding Drake London and some ancillary pieces in the secondary. They were 7-10 last year. Carolina, I feel like, is going to improve on the margins and probably eke out a couple more wins. I think the Falcons should be a team that the Carolina Panthers end up eking out wins against. So I think if Carolina goes 7-10 this year, Atlanta could be at risk of finishing like 5-12 if we're correct. We're looking at the schedule, Austin. We've got New Orleans, Los Angeles, Seattle, 1-2. Cleveland, Tampa Bay, San Francisco. I'll give them
maybe Cleveland.
Yeah, so 2-4. Then you go San Francisco, Cincinnati, Carolina. I think that's 2-7. I genuinely think Carolina could beat them twice. They're going to split. Then they play the Chargers. That's a loss. They play Carolina again. Could be a win. Then they get Chicago, Washington, Pittsburgh. Possibly get 2 out of 3. I think they might go 1-2. Washington could be surprising to people this year, especially with Carson Wentz. He's not as bad as we think he is. He's just not as good as he once was, which makes him look even worse. New Orleans, again, that's a loss. Baltimore, that's a loss. Arizona, I think by this time in the season, they've either cratered or they're actually somehow keeping up the level of play we get weeks 1 through 8 for Cliff Kingsbury. And they finished the year at Tampa Bay. This is a team that is not playing for the playoffs. This is a team that is looking to lock in another top 5 pick. I think this could be one of the worst teams in football. I expect them to be a lock for a top 10 draft pick. And I don't know what direction they're going with that draft pick. I hope they probably go offensive line or edge defender, but they drafted a quarterback this previous year. If they're not top 3, they shouldn't go quarterback again. It's just Arthur Smith is a decently good football mind, and he did a lot with nothing last year. It's just I don't know how much longer he can eke out 7-10 seasons with a team that just isn't as talented as those around them.
Well, and he shouldn't eke out a 7-10 win. Where it doesn't get you where you want to be. They got that number 8 pick, but I feel like yes, they got Drake London, but I feel like that's not really the pick you wanted. Like, yes, it's the guy they wanted because they took him at 8. Like, duh. But I feel like if you were just a little bit worse, you could have got a really good defensive piece. And I feel like that would have been much better for you. Granted, it'll be really cool to see Calvin Ridley and Drake London play on the same field next year. And that'll be good for whoever the quarterback is. But I feel like that would be more better for a person who's going to sling the ball more. Whereas in terms of Marcus Mariota, he's better at options and short passes. And he's still a good quarterback. Obviously, he's much more talented than I'll ever be. He has a job for a reason, and I think he's going to keep that job throughout the season. I don't foresee any reason why Desmond Ridder should start any games. Maybe 1, maybe 2 if you're way out of it and kind of one of those see what you got kind of deals. But you did Matt Ryan a favor by sending him off to Indianapolis. You got your draft picks for him, whatever they were. I can't remember what the full trade was. But that's kind of where it has to start, is that you got rid of Matt Ryan because he was not going to go anywhere with you guys. Your time is over. Your 28-3 meme will continue to live however long bad you are. This is kind of what it's going to be for Atlanta for the next couple of years. It's rebuild time. It's time to stop finishing mediocre.
Yeah. The big thing with this evaluation as well is this team doesn't have Matt Ryan. As good as Matt Ryan was at his peak, like NFL MVP Matt Ryan is no longer that. But Matt Ryan was good enough to give you a relative floor of 6 to 7 wins, regardless of who's around him. He's that talented to keep offenses humming and rolling. They're losing Matt Ryan, who has been the identity of the Falcons for so many years. I think that alone is a blow big enough for this team to kind of drop a couple wins just off the board. And I do think Atlanta learned from Carolina to a certain extent, because Carolina held on to Cam Newton to almost the bitter end, it felt like. Atlanta got something for Matt Ryan. So that's gravy at this point. If they can just hit on these draft picks they're getting from the Matt Ryan deal, I think their retooling / rebuild will be jump-started in a way that wouldn't have been if Matt Ryan would have just finished out his contract. So Atlanta's going to have to eat crow for the next couple of years, but I think it's going to lead to something that'll actually give them a solid shot to compete once your Tom Brady's of the world are finally retired. Because I don't trust Kyle Trask and Blaine Gabbert to commandeer that offense to NFC South titles.
Right. Yeah, they just need to be bad. Like, honestly, I know tanking is and isn't a thing. And if you kind of look at their schedule last year, you look at their wins, they really never surprised anybody. You know, they got blasted by the Eagles week 1, lose to the Buccaneers week 2, you beat the Giants week 3, you lose to the Commanders week 4, you beat the Jets, you beat the Dolphins, you lose to the Panthers, you beat the Saints, which I can foresee them splitting with the Saints because divisional games are always weird and the best team doesn't always win. You get slaughtered by the Cowboys. You get slaughtered by the Patriots. You beat the Jaguars. You lose to the Bucs again. You beat the Panthers. You lose to the Niners. You beat the Lions. They lose to the Bills, and they lose to the Saints. None of those wins at any point made me be like, wow, they beat that team. Like, no, it just kind of made sense. And they should get swept by Carolina. They should get swept by New Orleans. Win a couple games here and there. But no, you need a higher pick. There's no reason for Atlanta to be good this year. I mean, let me rephrase that. If they want to be good and they win double-digit games, great for them. If they somehow find a way, fucking do it. But you cannot finish 7-10 again. You need to get either top 5 or you need to push for a wild card spot. Take your pick. Being mediocre, we will say this until the end of the time, is one of the worst places to be because you always don't get the best guys. And that's what you need in a rebuild, is you need to get those best guys. This is why Jacksonville and Detroit are looking up, because they're able to get those best guys and they look a little bit better each year. Why hasn't Carolina looked like they've insanely improved? Because they've been mediocre for a really long time. Ever since they lost the Super Bowl, they maybe have made the playoffs once since then, but it's been a roller coaster with Cam Newton, and now it's been just a roller coaster with the quarterback spot in general, and now they have no idea what to do. They've been throwing picks at any quarterback who's willing to get a ball snapped to them for 5 games until they give up on them.
Yeah.
Okay. If there was anything in the world that made you believe the salary cap was nothing but a fantasy and a lie, it's the New Orleans Saints. It feels like they're always $300 million over cap, and then they just find a way back in under it. The salary cap doesn't exist, kids. It just doesn't exist. You know what also doesn't exist? Sean Payton as their head coach. Sean Payton's out. We have brought back Dennis Allen into the world after his tough run as Raiders head coach, right? That's his one job that he's had in the NFL as head coach.
Let me fact check.
While you fact check, we got Jimbo Winston, the 30 for 30 man himself at quarterback. This is a Jameis Winston stand podcast. We love Jameis Winston here at the podcast. He's a good dude. He slings the rock, and he's fun to watch. He actually was. Okay.
You're correct, yeah.
Jameis was 7-2 or 5-2. I can't remember.
He came out of hurt. They came out swinging. I think week 1 they kicked the shit out of Green Bay to everyone's surprise. Like they came out of they were shot out of a cannon last year, and I don't think that was a fluke. I think the New Orleans Saints were on paper a team that downgraded on paper at quarterback. Drew Brees' mind was just so pure in the game of football. For all of the lack of arm power that he had near the end, Drew Brees was actually a great commandeer for this offense, especially with Sean Payton. Jameis Winston was a breath of fresh air. He got LASIK eye surgery. He was training all offseason, and he came out swinging. He had a good touchdown-interception ratio, and he was not losing the Saints games. This is a team that over the last half decade has had one of the more consistent defenses in all of football. They're not top 5, but there's no way they're in the bottom 5 over the last 5 years. They're incredibly consistent. And the Saints, for lack of better terms, they had a worst-case scenario happen. They lose Jameis to a torn ACL less than halfway through the year. They're now dealing with a carousel of guys like Ian Book, was it Trevor Siemian? And Taysom Hill. Yeah, this three-headed monster of guys that aren't NFL starters. And I think the thing for me with New Orleans is I think they have a really good shot to win this division, and I don't think it's hyperbole. Obviously, if Alvin Kamara gets suspended this season, that complicates things. From everything I've read and heard, I don't think Kamara gets disciplined this season. I think it's coming in 2023. But you're bringing back Michael Thomas. You added Jarvis Landry, and you drafted Chris Olave. This is the best trio of New Orleans receivers since Drew Brees was throwing to like Marquise Colston, Jimmy Graham, and you can insert the third guy. I can't even remember. It's been that long. This is a roster that has greatly improved on offense, and they still have great pieces on the offensive line. Andres Pete, Eric McCoy, and fucking Ryan Ramczyk are great offensive line pieces. Jameis is going to have protection. And I guess my only concerns are their defense and the depth over there, because they are very superstar dependent and heavy on defense. Because for every Cameron Jordan and Demario Davis, you've got Paulson Adebo and you've got Caden Ellis. You've got some guys that I'm not fully sold on. The secondary is going to be good. Marcus May is a solid, strong safety. Tyron Matthews was the quarterback of the Chiefs defense for the bulk of this Mahomes era in Kansas City. And Marshawn Lattimore, whenever he is healthy, is easily a top 5 corner in all of football. And personally, I think he's top 3. You've got Jalen, you've got Jair, and you've got Marshawn. They are lockdown as lockdown gets. There's a reason why Mike Evans hates playing New Orleans. It's Marshawn Lattimore. But for me, the craziest part about this team, and I need to see Dennis Allen be able to bring a coordinator in to actually help with this offense. But if Kamara gives you a full 17 and Michael Thomas is back to what he was with Drew Brees there, this offense could be one of the best in football. They should have the pass protection. Alvin Kamara is one of the best backs whenever he's healthy. His level of skill and balance are unmatched. I've seen him do things off of a spin move where anybody else is falling down. He just kind of gathers himself and scurries for 70 yards. This is the best offensive roster I've seen out of the Saints in the last 5 years. And I don't think that's an overstatement.
And the thing is, I fact checked myself. So Jameis finished 5-2. He got knocked out in the middle of Game 7 of last year against Tampa Bay, and they won that game. So we'll give him the start win. Jameis Winston didn't blow us away last year. He didn't sling the rock like he does, but he threw 14 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions. He did not turn the ball over. And when you have a good defense like New Orleans has that puts you in good positions, that's all you really need to do. He threw for 14 touchdowns in 7 games. I'm not going to complain. He didn't throw for a ton of yards, but he didn't need to.
He had 161 attempts and had 14 touchdowns. He almost had 10% of his attempts as touchdowns. The thing with Jameis Winston last year for me, personally, so he had 95 completions. That's almost 14% of his completions as touchdowns. He was extremely efficient, and that's all he needs to be for this team. And a big thing for me is New Orleans finished 9-8 last year with Ian Book, Taysom Hill, and Trevor Siemian riding the ship. No Michael Thomas, no Jarvis Landry, no Chris Olave. Looking at the depth chart, you've got Marquez Callaway, Traquan Smith, and Dante Hardy as the backups to their starting 3 receivers. And I will tell you something. That is arguably the best assemblage of backup receivers the league has. Because, yes, Traquan Smith is not a 1. Marquez Callaway was not a 1 last year. And Dante Hardy by himself is not even a wide receiver 3. They filled a role last year for a team that needed receivers, and the team still finished 9-8. I credit the defense a lot for that finish. But if Jameis is to struggle at all, or if he does go down, knock on wood for Saints fans, Andy Dalton's the backup this year. I don't think any of the questions I had coming into the offseason I still have. Because if Jameis can't play, who's next? Andy Dalton is not a terrible quarterback. He is not a starter anymore, and he's not my first choice for any competitive team. But Andy Dalton can throw the rock. Andy Dalton isn't so far removed from A.J. Green and John Ross and taking some of these Cincinnati teams to the playoffs. I don't think Andy Dalton's completely washed. So even if this team deals with injuries, I think their offensive depth is going to be something that other teams just don't have. And that's not even mentioning Mark Ingram as the backup to Alvin Kamara. Like, this team is genuinely deep on offense, and I think they can withstand whatever injuries may come their way, unless it's everybody getting hurt a la a Baltimore Ravens last year. But whenever this the receiving corps this year is featuring 3 guys they did not have at all last year, there's nowhere to go but improve unless Jameis just can't stop throwing it to the other team.
Right. And this team finished 1 game away from the playoffs. If the 49ers lose to the Rams in week 18, the Saints were in the playoffs. They were one little bit of help away from going to the playoffs. And like you said, with Ian Book, Trevor Siemian, and Taysom Hill, Marquez Callaway, and all those guys, the offense looks great on paper. And the defense is weird to me because there's always some weeks where it feels like they don't show up at all, and then some weeks where they're absolutely dominating. And they've dominated the Bucs the past 2 years. They've dominated Tom Brady the past 2 years. And if they can do that again, we posted the question yesterday, who do you think is going to win the NFC South? Yes, it does seem as straightforward as picking Tampa Bay. Yes. But at the same time, if the Saints find a way to 2-0 Tampa again, things get a little weird. Because this team is improved from its 9-8. They could win 12 games. Now, is Tampa Bay going to go 14-3 again? Maybe. It's easily possible.
Well, let's just go through the schedule. They split with Tampa Bay last year, and they literally beat them with missing Jameis for half of the game, if I'm correct, or like a quarter and a half of no Jameis. So
Jameis was 6 for 10 for 56 yards and a touchdown in that game.
Exactly. So they ended up beating Tom Brady and the Bucs at full strength without their starting quarterback. So I would be surprised if New Orleans can't split with Tampa Bay, especially at home. So you got Atlanta, Tampa Bay, Carolina, Minnesota. Out of that run, they could not easily be 4-0, but I think easily could be 3-1. Unless Minnesota is just way different than I fully expect in this Kevin O'Connell offense. You get Seattle, Cincinnati, Arizona, Vegas. Totally reasonable to believe they win 2 of those games. You're 5-3 at that point if everything goes right. Then we get this run of Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Rams, Niners, Tampa Bay. I say they win 1 of those games. You're now at 6 wins.
I think they can beat Pittsburgh, and then who knows about the Tampa game.
So if they could win 2 games in that stretch, they're now at 7 wins coming into the final 4 games of the year. They're beating Atlanta, they're beating Cleveland, they're beating Philadelphia, and if they've run off 3 straight wins going into Carolina, there's no way on this green earth that I think they're losing to Carolina. I think the Saints have been good for so long, we underrate how talented the players truly are. And for once, it's not going to be the Sean Payton show or the Drew Brees show. It's going to be the New Orleans Saints show. And I just, for a team that is, like, for all the praises I gave to the Carolina Panthers, the Saints are fully realized in talent and potential. And if your 3rd string receiver this year is Chris Olave, a guy that is better than anybody you fielded last year as a rookie, this offense has the potential to be top 10 in the league if Jameis cannot turn the ball over and every weapon stays healthy. Because it's hell. Michael Thomas was giving the top DBs in the league hell with Drew Brees whenever he could only throw 15 yards downfield accurately. Jarvis Landry was toiling away in Cleveland for the last 3 or 4 years. You know what happened whenever the Cleveland Browns let go of a receiver last year? He went to Los Angeles and won a Super Bowl. The receivers in Cleveland aren't lacking talent. They just didn't have talent to get them the ball. And I think Jameis will be the best quarterback Jarvis has had probably in his career. Maybe Ryan Tannehill is a tad bit better than Ryan Tannehill in Miami was not better than Jameis Winston is right now. So I just, relatively speaking, this is a team that did not get worse over the offseason. During an offseason where I thought they were going to have to really get creative, which they did with the salary cap, this is a team that is going to figure out ways to be competitive and add talent regardless of what the cap is telling them. until they eventually crater. But this is a core that has been together. This defense is veteran. They have been playing together for a long time. My biggest concern is Marcus May being gone. Not Marcus May, Marcus Williams. He left for Baltimore this offseason. Marcus May is going to be playing in his stead, or it's Tyron Matthews. You got 2 new safeties. So I don't know if that's going to translate immediately, but I don't know if it has to, because they have
one. How do you feel about Tyron Matthews?
I think Tyron Matthews is one of the better safeties in football. I don't think athletically he is what he used to be. And in Kansas City last year, he gave up on a lot of plays. If you watch the film, there's a handful of times, or more than a handful of times, where he's not directly in the line of the play. He'd give up on some of these run pursuits. But he's an older veteran player. I don't expect Tyron Matthews to give 110% and be able to play 17 games. But I think him on the back line, being able to coach up some of his contemporaries, obviously Lattimore doesn't need the help out there. But whenever you've got guys like, so you got Bradley Roby and PJ Williams as the backup corners, I think Tyron Matthews being out there elevates the floor of a lot of the guys also in the secondary. So he's an elite defender. He has the mind that has been able to allow him to transcend teams. He was great in Arizona for so long, and then he went to Kansas City, and he was the quarterback of that defense, which overachieved, for lack of better terms, for most years that they were playing with Tyron Matthews. And I don't think much of that is going to change, because I don't think Tyron Matthews' edge comes from his flat-out physical capabilities, especially since his time in Arizona. So this defense, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, I think for this team in general, they look better than they do last year. If the offense can stay healthy, they're one of the better ones in football. If Jameis was doing what he was doing with Marquez Callaway and friends, he's going to do much better with Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry, and Chris Olave. And you still have Marquez Callaway, who's not a bad deep threat. He made some really good plays last year, and we all know Jameis has the arm power. There's no question about that. But a much more conservative Jameis Winston, we saw what he was doing with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, slinging the ball around. We know he can put up numbers, and we know he can throw it to the other team a lot. But if we see the Jameis that we saw last year, I think this team is in a much better spot to compete and will be in control of their own destiny. Am I going to pick him to win the division? Probably not. It's just hard to pick against Tampa Bay as long as they still employ Tom Brady. But they can be much better than they were last year and be control of their own destiny and be a 5th or a 6th wildcard spot easily.
Yeah, the Saints will not miss the playoffs due to lack of talent. It will be lack of continuity or just Dennis Allen not being the guy that they need him to be. Because that's the biggest question. That's my biggest question with New Orleans. Will the coordinators on offense be able to help Dennis Allen enough? Because I trust the defense. Dennis Allen has been there since like 2015, if I'm correct. He's been commandeering this defense for a long time. And the best players on this defense have been there for at least 3 to 4 years. So the defense should not miss a beat. And even with the new additions, I think Tyron Matthews is going to be one of the better impacts immediately for defenses because of his mind, as opposed to some of these other guys that signed with new teams in the offseason. I just trust that I think he will have a more immediate impact than a Justin Reed out in Kansas City, if that makes sense. Because we've seen Matthews' mind, and his body has aged well because of the mind that he possesses. But go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, honestly, like you just said, Dennis Allen's the biggest question mark. If there's anything that's going to hold this team back, it's Dennis Allen. And outside of that, it's not lack of talent. It's not lack
that's not inherently Dennis Allen's fault. This is an impossible situation because the fact of the matter is Sean Payton has been one of the more emergent NFL minds over the last 15, 20 years. Like, he took New Orleans to a Super Bowl, and he's commandeered Drew Brees' best years of his career, and he just stepped away. So expecting Dennis Allen to come in this year and just figure out the offense that quickly, I just have to have faith in the coordinators he has around him. But if this offense takes a step back with the weapons they have added, it's going to be very difficult to swallow because the offense on paper is so much better.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's kind of like how we feel, maybe not you, but this is kind of how I feel about Josh McDaniels. It's like we have this guy who has had head coaching experience and he's done terribly in his time, went back to be under one of the better head coaches in the game, if not for Josh McDaniels, one of the best head coaches ever, And then for Dennis Allen to be able to sit under Sean Payton for so long, yes, he had Drew Brees, but that's still, you can't attribute everything to Brees. Brees is a great quarterback, don't get me wrong, but Sean Payton has been a great mind for so long in New Orleans and kept them relevant for a reason. And yes, Dennis Allen is in between a rock and a hard place. He's expected to succeed almost immediately when in reality he's a huge step down from Sean Payton. And like you said, it's not his fault. It's just kind of the situation that fell in his lap.
Dennis Allen has every single piece he needs to succeed because whenever he coached for the Raiders, they went 4-12 both years he was the head coach, and he made it through 4 games in his third year and lost all 4 of them. Granted, 2012 through 2014 were some dark years for Raiders fans, but this is your shot, Dennis. If you're going to be an NFL head coach, you have to make it work right now because the Saints window is not 3 years from now. It's not even 2 years from now. It is right now. Alvin Kamara is on a extended running back contract. Michael Thomas, he's on an extension. You have a cheap quarterback, but you have a lot of guys that are going to be expecting big money over the next 3 to 4 years, and this core cannot withstand more extensions. They are capped out.
Okay.
But speaking of windows, Austin, speaking of windows, when is Tom's going to close? Because, God, he's like 45 now. He's 44.
When we posted the question yesterday, a handful of people said, this is the year Tom Brady regresses. This is the year Tom Brady is washed. This is the 45. Year. This is the year. I get it, but look, how many times has Tom Brady proved us wrong? I will look the camera dead in the eyes and say this. I will continue to pick Tom Brady until he shows me otherwise. At 44 years old, he led the league in passing yards. Does he have a great wide receiver core? Yeah. Does he have a great line? Yeah. Of course he has great pieces around him. But Father Time has not beaten Tom Brady, just like a lot of other people haven't beaten Tom Brady. This is the way it is. Tom Brady is going to stop when he wants to stop. Hell, he could even be playing just to spite Adam Schefter. Who knows?
The craziest part about the whole Tom Brady thing is any team could have had Tom. Hell, the Saints could have had Tom, but Drew Brees was still there toiling away in his later years. Like, it's funny. You think of like the meme of like Thanos is like, what did it cost? And then you have a picture of Jameis in the Saints gear, and it says everything as Tom's winning Super Bowls with the Bucs. The Bucs did it right. The Bucs had really mediocre teams with a talented quarterback in terms of Jameis Winston that had very hard times actually like keeping the ball and not turning it over. But they did what they had to do through those years and assembling some of the best talent the league had to offer. They went out in free agency and added talent. And essentially, Tom Brady was that fifth infinity stone that basically set it all off. Like, this roster was as plug and play as any for Tom Brady's join whenever he decided to be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer in 2020, if I'm correct, or 2021. Whatever year it was, this roster is as win now as it gets outside of the Los Angeles Rams. Tom Brady falling off would make this entire pick way easier, and New Orleans wins the division. But whenever the dude throws for 5,000 yards and got snubbed for an MVP last year, I can't bet against Tom Brady. I'm not Max Kellerman. I can't say he's going to fall off the edge of a cliff because we have no fucking clue. Tom Brady is an anomaly. As great as LeBron James is today at 38 years old, year 19, all of this great stuff, Tom's doing it in a far more physical sport. While I understand the rules have changed and quarterbacks don't get hit as much, but given the circumstances, there has not been a quarterback in the history of the NFL that has played this well at this high of a level for this long before Tom Brady. Peyton fell off the face of the earth before he hit 40. Drew Brees was a shell of himself. Every quarterback that he came up with and was actually competing against is gone. Tom Brady has no contemporary. He is a one of one. He is the greatest quarterback to ever play in the NFL. And you can say all you want about Joe Montana, or you could claim Dan Marino, or hell, you could even say Peyton Manning. Because yes, talent for talent, Tom is up there with them. But what separates Tom isn't just the winning, not just the talent. It's also the longevity. And he's done it in multiple spots. And it's just, Father Time comes for everyone. But I think Tom Brady has that man on salary. So whenever Tom's done, Tom will be done, but it will be on Tom's terms. And Austin, like we said, Dennis Allen is a huge question mark for this New Orleans team and their new offensive weapons. I'm not as concerned about the Bucs' change of head coach. Bruce Arians is arguably a Hall of Fame head coach in my eyes. I don't know if he fully makes it just due to longevity of his career. But winning that Super Bowl, I think, added some allure to his resume that I think should get him in. Byron Leftwich is that I'm correct, and that's the new head coach, correct?
I think
Let me
so.
double check.
For
Byron
some reason,
Leftwich.
I want to say Todd Bowles, but I think that's wrong. I think you're correct in Byron.
Byron Leftwich. What is Byron Leftwich doing now? He was the Bucs offensive coordinator in 2019 whenever they won the Super Bowl. Byron Leftwich is the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He has been the offensive.
Quick, I just love the Google searches of what is Byron Leftwich doing now? Well, you see.
He's probably eating dinner. It's no,
what
Byron
is he doing
Leftwich,
literally right now?
He's probably sleeping. It's like 10 o'clock their time right now or something like that. But what I'm saying is Tampa has a couple of questions on defense that I don't think are as big as the questions of Dennis Allen having to lead this team in New Orleans. Byron Leftwich is the mind that has been behind Tom Brady as a Bucs quarterback. He is now their head coach. Todd Bowles is the defensive coordinator. There's been little turnover in this Tampa Bay unit of coaches. So the defense should relatively be the same. They haven't swapped coordinators in 3 years. And while they lost Bruce Arians, I don't think it's that big of an impact. Tom is still the best quarterback to play the sport. I don't think his mind is going to betray him this year. And I think if Bruce Arians was trusting Byron Leftwich to command this offense led by Tom Brady, I think he's totally capable of leading this offense to another top 10 finish. The weapons are there. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Russell Gage, and they just added Julio Jones. Like, I understand, like, it's not the best core in the NFL anymore because Antonio Brown's gone, but if Julio Jones comes back to even half of what he was in Atlanta, he could be one of the best wide receiver threes in the sport. And I don't think that's hyperbole. You have a tight end in Cameron Brate, who was solid last year. They lost O.J. Howard. Cool. Insert Kyle Rudolph, who I think is going to have a 10-touchdown season if Tom Brady has anything to say about it. They have talent. They've got it oozing from the seams. And while, yes, Ryan Jensen being out is going to hurt, Tristan Wirfs is one of the best young tackles in football. And at guard, you got Shaq Mason and Aaron Stinney. And Donovan Smith is no slouch at left tackle. This is an offensive line that is designed to weather the storm of losing your center. And on defense, for losing Ndamukong Suh, you've got Akeem Hicks. Vita Vea is still here. William Golston should be able to produce. Devin White and Levante David, for as much as people don't like Devin White as a linebacker, he produces. And Levante David is top 5 still. He is extremely talented at linebacker. At corner, they've got some age to them. I'm not sure how they're going to age this season. You've got Jamal Dean and Carlton Davis along with Sean Murphy-Bunting. It is a lively group in the secondary of guys that I think should be able to produce for this defense, but they are getting on the older side outside of you got Antoine Winfield Jr. I think Winfield Jr. has to be the commander of this defense this year in terms of the secondary. The better he plays, the better this unit will be. But yeah, the secondary is my only question on defense, just because it was a rotating door last year at corner. So
yeah, they did lose Sean Murphy-Bunting first game of the season against Dallas, so that's always a tough blow. And then they brought in Richard Sherman. That didn't work out too well. Like, yes, corner, it looks to be one of the issues again that they might need to address, or just outsling your opponent. They ran into some of those last year where they just outscored their opponent, but you can't get away with that in the playoffs. We saw it with the Rams. Tom Brady almost made his comeback, but in the end, it was just a little too much because they let up a little too much.
I will correct myself really quick. So Carlton Davis and Jamal Dean, I'm not really worried about them in terms of like being able to keep up with a full slate. They're in the prime of their careers. They're 25 and 26 respectively. If this secondary can stay healthy, especially if Sean Murphy-Bunting can be that 3 corner, this is a unit that I'm not going to sit here and say that they're better than New Orleans, but I think because Lattimore carries a level of gravity that nobody on this roster at corner has right now. But in terms of just being able to throw bodies at top receivers, I think the secondary can be more than serviceable, if not even one of the better ones, especially in their division. So for me, I like Tampa. They really didn't lose a whole lot. And Ndamukong Suh being gone isn't perfect for them. I believe Jason Pierre-Paul is also gone. But they're losing guys that were aging out to begin with. So you still have Todd Bowles commandeering this defense. I don't think they're going to lose a whole lot on the top end. Adding Akeem Hicks, even in the state that he is now, he's not prime Bears Akeem Hicks, but he's still going to be a difference maker on this defensive line. Like, you have to double Vita Vea a lot of these possessions because he's so damn big. And Devin White and Levante David are going to eat up running backs coming through the middle. And it's just...
The linebacker core of this team is easily one of the best, in my opinion.
And then you have Shaq. I didn't even mention Shaquille Barrett. This team, this defense, like... This defense is so good that the secondary is my biggest worry. And that should be a compliment to the rest of the defense, not a slight to their secondary.
I mean, Devin White, Levante David, and Shaq Barrett are going to eat people alive. It's just simple fact. They're so good at what they do. They are really good field generals on the defensive side of the ball. Losing to Ndamukong Suh does suck. Attitude problems or not, he was fine when he was in Tampa Bay, and he was a menace to society. But Vita Vea, like you said, will need to be double teamed. That man is also a menace to society. You look at the offense, there's really just no questions. Leonard Fournette really came out as a good receiving back and just a good back in general. I think we've always known he was a good running back, whether he's 65 pounds overweight or not. I think he'll be just fine. Of course, you have the quarterback in Blaine Gabbert. Blaine Gabbert is going to take this team all the way to the top. I don't see how you can ever pick against Blaine Gabbert. And if he goes down, Kyle Trask, you're good to go. It's not particularly close. Best quarterback in this division. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Russell Gage, they signed Julio Jones. Like, what else do you want? However many games Chris Godwin has to miss, Julio Jones will fill that, and then Julio will probably get hurt, and then Chris Godwin will come back just in time. They say Julio is looking like prime Julio. I'll believe it when I see it, but I can't deny the talent that Julio has somewhere in there when he is available.
Julio Jones got 434 receiving yards playing with Ryan Tannehill. To sit here and say I don't believe he can hit 800 to 900 would be asinine, because he's not getting the number one corner. He's not even getting the number two corner on this offense. He's facing the slot corner or a linebacker at best. Julio Jones is only 33 years old. And if history lends its ear to me, Terrell Owens was tearing up NFL defenses into his mid to late 30s. So while Julio Jones was not himself last year or even the year before due to injuries, if we get a fully healthy Julio Jones, I think he'll be better than what we saw out of Antonio Brown, genuinely. His mind's going to be in the right place, and if his body can be congruent with his mindset, I don't see a world where Tom Brady doesn't give him targets. Because Julio's playing with the best quarterback in his career, and I think Julio, obviously not in his current state, is one of the best receivers Tom's ever had the pleasure to throw to. Like, we've had conversations about all-time rankings and the best receivers of the last 10 years. Most people's top 5 lists are highlighted by guys like Julio Jones and Antonio Brown. As good as Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are today, Julio has been that, if not more. And if anyone's going to bring out prime Julio, it's Tom. And like I said before, this team should win 12 games minimum, I think. Yeah. They could start slow. They could very well start slow. I'm looking at the schedule right now. You've got Dallas, New Orleans, Green Bay, and Kansas City. Would you be surprised if they went 1-3? I would not. I personally would not be surprised. I think they could easily pull 2-2, possibly 3-1.
You said, I think Dallas, Green Bay, Kansas City, and who else?
And then New Orleans. So it's Green Bay. So it's Dallas, New Orleans. So at Dallas, at New Orleans, at home, Green Bay, and Kansas City.
I don't think at Dallas changes a thing. If the Cowboys are still their yellow flag selves, then they'll easily lose that game. But when it comes to, they'll give them a tough game. Dallas always seems to play the games they're not supposed to win the toughest. We saw it last year in week 1 when we played Tampa Bay.
I like Dallas this year. I think Dallas comes out slow to start the year. I just think you guys are really decimated on offense in terms of your overall weapons. If Tampa Bay can slow down CeeDee Lamb, it's going to have to be Dalton Schultz and whoever is your backup receiver, because I don't even think Michael Gallup's starting the year, if I'm correct, right?
Right. It's probably Jalen Tolbert as number 2, if I remember right.
So you have to stop CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz, and then I don't know if Zeke's going to be breaking off 200 yards. It'll have to be a game where Dak puts the team on his back, and I just think Tampa's defense is good enough to slow down this offense in its limited state. And as much as you love Trevon Diggs in the year he had last year, that secondary is going to have a hard time if they have Julio, Chris, and Mike Evans.
I mean, let's be fair. Trayvon Diggs was a great opportunist, but he still gave up a shit ton of yards. It's as simple as that.
He's a ball hawk, not a coverage guy.
Yeah, so there you go. So even as a Dallas fan, give me Tampa Bay over Dallas. Then it's what, Green Bay after that? In Green Bay or at Tampa?
They're playing at New Orleans the next week, which is why I think it could get kind of interesting. I think they should beat them. I'd like to believe they could.
Whoever knows.
That's a toss-up. If you're from New Orleans, give them an L. If you're from Tampa Bay, give them a W. I think they play Green Bay at home, and I think it might get ugly against Green Bay. I think they beat Green Bay.
That's a tough game to pick. I'd have to see the first 2 weeks in order to pick that game when we get to it. That's a tough one.
I need to see how Alan Lazard plays with Aaron Rodgers this year, and I need to see if Christian Watson is healthy and starting the year. Because offensively, just looking at the teams, Tampa Bay has everything Green Bay has and one of the best receiving corps in football. Defensively, Green Bay could cause Thompson fits. I think they have the best secondary to go against a team like Tampa. And I think their defense is this will be a matchup of two great defenses. And I just think Tampa has more on offense going into week 3. So it should be close. I think the defenses are going to make this game really interesting. But I think Tampa's offense should be enough to get this one out against Green Bay. But I would not be surprised if Rodgers somehow goes into Tampa and beats Tom, because Aaron's just kind of an asshat like that. He likes to win big games and then not win in the playoffs, but that's just a Green Bay thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Kansas City, what do you feel about that?
I'd have to see the 3 weeks of how those teams come out, because I know Kansas City can start. Whoever really starts slow is going to lose this game. I could not pick it right now. I tell you that. My gut tells me to pick Kansas City, but it's just, I don't know.
I'm going with Tampa Bay beating Kansas City. I think Kansas City's defense took a step back, and I just think the receivers they have. Kelsey's going to have a huge day, and one of the new targets he has to show up. With the front seven they have, and with the secondary they have as well, I think they're going to be able to get to Mahomes in certain ways. While their offensive line in Kansas City is far improved from last year in terms of just continuity and another year together.
Well, another thing too for Tampa is that we'll see what the line looks like without Alex Kappa and Ryan Jensen.
You are correct.
Kappa went to Cincinnati. Ryan Jensen could be out for the year. They're still kind of teeter-tottering on that. But Ryan Jensen is easily one of the best centers, if not, I'd say Jason Kelsey's up there too. I'd have to make a list of centers. But Ryan Jensen puts himself in the conversation as one of the best centers in the game and keeping Tom, safe. And that's been one of the biggest things of Tom's career is he's only really lost 1 year of his career. 2?
ACL. Well, he tore his ACL. His first year, he was a backup. Then he got brought in whenever Bledsoe went down. But KC, he tore his ACL, and then they had.
But he's never taken too much damage.
No. He's only missed a full year of play since he became the starter. So realistically, Tampa Bay comes out at best 3-1, at worst 1-3. Realistically, 2-2 out of this 4-game stretch.
Yeah.
Then we get into a really nice part of the schedule for this team. Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Carolina, Baltimore. They win 3 of those 4 automatically. Could go 4-0.
Baltimore's the toughest game, and the Steelers are always tough on them. So
I think they go 3-1 or 4-0.
Going 2-2 wouldn't shock me, but yes, I would say 3-1.
3-1, possibly 4-0 there. Playing Los Angeles at Tampa Bay. I think Tampa could win this game, especially if Matthew Stafford's arm isn't what.
Yeah, what Matt Stafford am I getting? What time of the year is it for the Los Angeles Rams? Mm-hmm. Because they will have a bad stretch what
Stafford's
happened last
dealing
season.
with the elbow thing too.
Yeah.
So Tampa beats LA. They're beating Seattle. I don't care what anybody says. They're beating Seattle. Deshaun Watson versus Tom Brady. Give me Tom Brady. playing New Orleans again. If New Orleans beat them the first time, I'm taking Tampa Bay the second time. If Tampa Bay beat them the first time, I'm still probably taking them the second time. They're playing them at home. Then San Francisco, that's a tough game. I think depending on which Trey Lance we see in this season, the Niners could very well win this game. Cincinnati, I'm leaning Tampa Bay, but Cincinnati has proven that they can beat teams.
Yeah, that'll be a really good game. Tampa Bay's got a lot of good games on their schedule.
And then the final 3 weeks, Arizona, Carolina, Atlanta, they could go on a run from week 15 to week 18 of 4-0. Because it's a toss-up against Cincinnati, but I'm leaning Tampa Bay.
Well, what? It's week 16 against Arizona, so if Cliff Kingsbury isn't fired, then just chalk it up as a win.
Yep.
If you play Cliff Kingsbury in the later season, it's just math.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Based upon our projections, and they're not going 3-1 in the first one, 12 wins. If they go 4-0 in this stretch later in the year, they could have 14 wins. This is a team that's floor feels about like 12 wins, and their ceiling could be 14 if everything breaks right and they catch teams at the right time. So, as uninspiring as it may sound, Tampa Bay is probably going to win this division, and they're probably going to be a favorite to win it all.
There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I will say this team is not really set up for whenever Tom Brady calls it quits, but that honestly, neither was the Patriots. They I'm not going to say they got lucky, but it happened at the right time for them to be in the draft of, 5 good quarterbacks, and they got the 5th one. I don't think they need to be set up for when Tom Brady leaves. The window is now, so capitalize on now. There's no reason for you not to. They easily could be champions again this year. They are one of the forces of the NFC, and we'll see what happens to Matt Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams. Between 12 and 14 wins. I don't think they could fall below 12 wins unless something catastrophic happens, unless they just come out flatter than the earth is. It's just there's no reason for me to pick against Tampa Bay. They've lost a couple line pieces, yes. Their secondary was questionable all last year, and they still found a way to win 13 games. So why would I pick against them now?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just in a league that's constantly changing. I view Tampa Bay as the high roller of the NFL. Obviously, the Rams have done this as well, but I think it's way more dire for the Bucs because Tom Brady is 45 years old. If there's ever a window for any team, the Bucs window was last year and right now, because you can't guarantee Tom being Tom for much longer. And I get it. Yeah. He could play until he's 55 for all we know. We don't understand Tom Brady. I never will. But based upon what we have seen from him, I don't see the wheels falling off. And even if he does slow down a little bit, I think the team around him is good enough to at least get him to the playoffs. This is a team that is a lock for the wild card at the worst and could possibly lock up a 1 seed if everything goes right. So it's chalk, but yeah, Tampa wins the division. I think New Orleans probably gets a wild card spot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty true. I don't see Carolina making it. They can try their hardest, but I just don't foresee it. I think they'll be in the mediocre stage. I feel like Atlanta should be one of the worst teams. They have the talent to be a mediocre team, but I don't think they should be a mediocre team. But if they were to finish with 6 or 7 wins, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. Same with Carolina. New Orleans should win 10 games and put themselves in a good playoff spot. Tampa Bay 12-14 and be just fine. It feels like a lock for Tampa Bay. You can say however much you think Tom Brady is going to regress until he does it. I'm not going to predict that it's going to happen. It's just it would just go against what history has shown me.
Yeah.
So I guess that'll do it.
Yep.
It feels really straightforward because the team that seemed to improve the most was the Saints, especially in terms of offense, of just Jarvis Landry, Chris Olave, and then a lot of the teams just kind of feel the same. Like, yes, the Panthers have a new quarterback, but it doesn't feel like a significant upgrade for it to matter. And obviously, Marcus Mariota is a downgrade from Matt Ryan, and without Calvin Ridley, the team is just not going to explode. Kyle Pitts should have a great season. Don't get me wrong.
Yes.
I think it'll be absolutely great to watch Kyle Pitts play football. But outside of that, there's nothing really going on down there either. I expect Tampa Bay to be the 1 or 2 seed. They easily could get the bye. Green Bay is always interesting and fighting for that for sure. And Los Angeles is there, but we'll see what happens with Matthew Stafford now. Got anything else on the division?
Not entirely. It's just this is a division. Sorry, my light turned off. No, it's just off. Okay, we're rolling with it. No, but this is a division that is greatly improved. So it's a division that's greatly improved, but the top has stayed relatively the same. The Bucs did not regress in any major way. I think the Saints' offense has improved greatly, and you have 2 teams at the bottom that are ripe for the picking in terms of these top 2 teams. I think they're going to eat each other alive at the bottom, but you've got 2 playoff caliber teams and 2 teams that are just trying to tread water. So it's you win some, you lose some, but it seems like this year New Orleans and Tampa Bay are going to be winning a lot more than they lose.
Yeah. Okay, that'll do it. A little bit of a slow night on Twitter, but it's a Monday night. We all had long weekends, so I get it. You can always catch us.
Be light.
Yeah, there you go. See, Devin's light came on, and we're good to go. Next week, we're going to the AFC South. Titans, Colts, Jaguars, Texans. 2 good teams, 2 really bad teams, so that'll always be interesting. It's always interesting to talk about bad teams because you never know what you're going to get, especially with Jacksonville setting, the whole wide receiver market and putting it on its head. So,
yeah.
Shout out to the Khan family for just shelling out money for Christian Kirk.
Shout out Christian Kirk for making the Mike Williams deal look great 36 hours after it was signed. Appreciate you, buddy. Everyone's like, oh my God, they're paying Mike Williams so much money. Well, Christian Kirk just got a bag, so congrats, the market got reset. Any contract that was signed yesterday will be better than the one signed tomorrow. It's just the way this thing works. But yeah, thank you to everybody for tuning in. Obviously, you can follow us on our socials at TMSM Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube, TMSM Podcast on YouTube. And feel free to hit us up on Twitter. Give us critiques, your compliments, whatever you feel. Just go ahead and put it out into the ether because it's a free forum.
Yeah, I'm sure that we hate your favorite team and we said some dumb shit and something was wrong and we didn't get Jameis's height down to the centimeters. So if we missed on that, just let us know. And I always got a notebook handy, so I'll write it down instantly and correct it. We're all about staying proper here on the Makeshift Manager podcast. After all, we are the most professional guys that you've ever seen. Like I got my coffee cup T-shirt, and
that's why the pink room. P for professional, my friend.
Exactly.
But as always, we thank you guys for tuning in, whether it be on Spotify, YouTube, or Twitter. We're thankful for our listeners, and we're thankful that you guys listen to us spew about stuff that, matters to all of us. So, Austin, if nothing left from you, I think we're going to send them off.
Send them off.
As always, we'll catch you down south next week. Peace.